Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is Game 3 from the 2013 World Chess Championship match between Anand and Carlsen. Going into this round, both players have 1 point each, and Carlsen on the white end opened with knight f3, as was the case in Game 1 where he had white. And we follow that game all the way up to move 3, where instead of bishop g2, which was played in Game 1, we have now c4, striking at the black center. Anand gives up his central pawn, white now having a 2-1 majority in the center. That's a good thing. And in exchange for it, black hopes to get the pieces out very quickly, knowing now that it will certainly take white some time before the c-pawn is recouped. Queen a4 is played. Black blocks and develops. Bishop g2, bishop g7, knight c3. And you'll note along the way, there's never really a moment to hang on to c4 successfully. Case in point right here on move 6. Firstly, you never really want to obstruct one of your central pawns. Bishop e6 does just that, and it's also vulnerable to knight g5, kicking away the defender of c4. So bishop e6, not a good idea. But maybe now that e5 is played and the queen is there to defend g5, maybe now black is ready to defend c4 successfully. And so you need to maybe be careful. If you go with the routine moves such as castle, now what are you going to do as white to gain that pawn back? Well, you could still play knight g5. And if the knight is captured, you're there to smash through on the black position on c6. So it seems like the queen is there, but it's just it's not working out. There's a tactical issue on the c6 square. So white could have castled at this point on move 7, but Carlsen picks up the pawn right away. Knight on g to e7. The more natural square is usually f6 for that king knight. And there's maybe a couple reasons behind deploying the knight to e7. One is that the bishop would like to have more direct sight of d4. Black would like to post up on that square, has support on d4, and maybe the knight on e7 would like to pivot about by way of f5 and jump into d4. White castles, black castles, and now d3, h6, and this is to secure an eventual bishop's position on e6. Bishop d2, tame deployment for that queen bishop. It's clearing c1 for a white rook. One other thing that I had questioned on the white side is, what if instead of bishop d2 you swing the queen over and converge on h7 or h6? One reply that black would always have, just to point out very quickly, is knight to f5, and this is super convenient. Knight may very well have wanted to go there anyway, and now it comes with an attack on the queen, and soon enough he'll be taking up a nice residence on d4. So there's never really a problem with meeting this queen to h4 move. Knight f5 is there. But one thing to certainly shy away from is a move such as g5. You're setting yourself up for some vicious attack where the sacrifice can take place on g5. White can give up their dark square bishop and now look for mate on h7. It can be defended temporarily with bishop to f5. But what do we do now if white tries to remove that bishop from f5, remove the defender of h7? Black can reinforce this point, knowing that if it is captured, you can recapture. And if this, well, now you're actually just, as black, making that last move. You're bringing more white pieces into the attack. And what to do about queen h7, not really a good defense. If the rook runs away, the knight could actually jump into f6. If he's captured, this is going to be a mate in 2. And if he's not captured, it's a mate in 1. Some other lines may very well run. Queen d7, again preparing to meet bishop takes with queen takes, and the queen is there to save the day. But what do you do now as black if g4 is played? Similar story. Take here, the knight is brought into play. Same stuff going on with the knight f6, queen h7 to f7 ideas, or maybe mate. You get the idea. And one last variation would be after this capture, if the rook runs away to e8, we could give a check. We could come back here, look for mate on f7. The knight can interfere with that. White could hammer away at f7. Black is there to defend, but now he comes in another knight into the attack. This bishop is immune from capture, you'll note, due to this check. Now the king is flush to a square where a knight could now give a fork to the queen and king. Bishop takes, knight takes. Maybe there was even something better along the way, but at the very least you're getting that black queen. So just some things to be aware of. That sacrifice is really crying out. Bishop takes on g5 if g5 is in fact played. But we didn't even have queen to h4. We had the tame bishop d2. The knight takes up a nice post on d4. It's eliminated, and with that we have now a structural change. Keep in mind that this is the correct way to be recapturing after knight takes. You don't want to take with the queen, not only for the reason that you would lose this pawn, but let's just say for some reason you couldn't take on c7 successfully. It's still not a good idea, because in this endgame I'm not so sure that this d4 pawn is an asset. It is much the opposite. It's a liability, has pressure on it, and this knight is very active, and there will soon be additional pressure along the c file. So if you're going to have this space advantage, you'll want to keep the queens around on the board, and so that's what black does, capturing immediately with the e pawn. The knight jumps into e4, looking to put pressure on the black queen side. b7 comes to mind. The bishop is certainly there, and the knight will look to put pressure on c5, or so I thought. The knight never really ends up on that c5 square, though. c6 immediately blunts this diagonal, and now we have bishop to b4. So now, initially I thought knight to c5, but maybe there's some thoughts of knight to d6. That also comes to mind. So bishop e6, the queen is hit, she drops all the way back, and during the game I was certainly scratching my head as to why queen c1 was played. And my thoughts ran as, well, maybe it had to do with where if the bishop is threatened with a5, the bishop could come back here, and at the very least white is grabbing a tempo against the h6 point. But we didn't have that. And the idea really is for the queen to later, as we will see, she relocates to the f4 square. I must say that c2 seems like the more natural square. You would like to keep c1 available for a rook, but the queen again has some intention of deploying over here on the king side. So bishop d6, opposite the better bishop, I guess you could say. I don't know that the e6 bishop is better than the g1 bishop. Maybe trying to exchange these and then take up a nice home for the knight on d5 would be a good idea. So bishop d5 it is. And now we have a4. I was also scratching my head with this move, not really being able to make much sense of it during the game, but it does show itself very soon what the idea is behind it. White is anticipating at this point Anand's idea of shutting down this bishop with b6 and c5, and if b6 is going to be played, and it is, we eventually will be able to peel open the a file, or at the very least challenge the pawn on b6 with this a5 move. So Carlsen gives up this dark square bishop, as otherwise he's going to be shut down. He's going to be knocked right out of the game. Just making a passing move if rook e1, what exactly is this bishop doing? And look at the great position on the black side, a very strong, very healthy pawn structure. This bishop biting on a rock. Soon this rook will be activated, and black is certainly in the driver's seat. So now is the time to understand that your bishop could be running the risk of not contributing at all in the position, so let's at least exchange that bishop. The queen is there to recapture, and now comes a5. This is of course consistent with that a4 move from a couple turns ago. Rook to b8, rook to e1, defending e2, and you might have thought actually at this point there's an opportunity to pick up this pawn on e2 with f5. And this could be an interesting variation. Knight d2, and if bishop takes, king takes, what's going to happen now after queen takes e2? Well, what can follow is a takes b, rook takes rook, rook takes rook, and during this game I was thinking the queen could take on c6, and she could, but what's maybe better is to first make use of the temporary position of the queen on c1, getting the rook involved with the tempo on the queen, and only after queen takes d can we have queen takes on c6. No time here to take the knight. The rook is threatened with check. And just making a passing move, you note that white is super active, and a move like this can be met with queen takes on g6. Note that this knight is still immune from capture due to white getting to this 7th rank, and there's big problems here for black. So just one thing to note, that was the first thing that came to mind for me. Oh, is there a way to kick the knight away and pick up this pawn? Well, not so fast. The other thing you'll want to be cautious of as black is ever touching this f-pawn. You really are subjecting your king to some issue on your 7th rank. So it's rook to b8, rook e1 now. Black's other rook gets involved, takes, and now here comes queen f4. So we're seeing the reason a few moves prior why we're having queen to c1. She is now contributing in some way on the king side. Rook to d8, and now we have h4 securing the g5 square. Rook to d8, by the way, is to maybe prevent this knight from jumping into d6. That could maybe be a bit problematic, so it rules that out right away. h4 is played, king to h7. Black might be wanting to make a move like bishop e5, but that would drop h6. King h7 is now there to defend. Knight d2, and when I saw this move, I was thinking during the game that we could yet again see the game end with a threefold repetition. I started to get very concerned. Didn't want to see that. And I thought that that's what we would enter. I thought that at this point black had an opportunity to force a threefold repetition in the following way. After queen g4, I thought instead of h5, black could play here. And there aren't very many options for the white queen. You play here, it's this sort of stuff, and one other try might be, well, queen here, same story. Fortunately for white, there would be a way around having this game go into a threefold repetition, a move that I overlooked, which is e4. This may very well be a good reply at this point. If it is taken, now maybe there's some issue for the black side, having to now work out of a pin. So we didn't go down that road, but we did get to the point where the bishop did play to e5, and the queen does play to g4, and now with h5, the queen is being kicked all the way to the corner, and she stays there for a while, about 10 moves. There is pressure on c6, and the idea should certainly be for white to somehow activate the queen, who's now stuck in the corner. Very unique position to see, the queen in the corner, and where might there be some compensation? What are some good things that white has at least? Well, at least there's this rook activity. If the black queen goes too far, this rook could make use of the a7 square. This knight is also, keep in mind, by having this h5 move played, the knight is not long off from being able to make use of g5. So there's some negatives associated with the black position, I guess you could say. The queen, sure, was kicked into the corner, but black had to give some squares up, or a square up, in order to do so, g5 in particular. So it is c5. The black pawns are set into motion, and there is this idea not long off, which is soon to be creating a passed pawn, a passed c pawn. So knight e4, king g7, knight g5, the bishop is hit, and now the big decision is, do you try to hang on to your bishop? Keep in mind that this is immediately challenged with rook a3, and if the bishop is playing to f5 or g4, we can have bishop h3. This is fine. White would love to have the light square bishops off the board, and on top of it, the queen is finally seeing. So we didn't have that. Anand enters a position where we have opposite color bishops. This bishop will be taken in short order. But what is played right now is e3. A lot of time was invested on that particular move, about 12 minutes. It did get a little bit close before time control here. Both players running a little bit short on time. Nothing too serious, but at this moment we do now have a structural change with e3, opening the position up, whereas for black, who has the bishop pair, and we have captures, and now bishop to d4. This is an important point in the game because I believe that this pawn can be captured successfully. It may seem a bit scary to do so because there certainly will be a lot of pressure now placed on the e6 bishop, hitting. It's already hit twice, and it will now be hit a third time, but black is there to defend, and if more pressure is placed on it, black is there to still defend some more. And there may also be first a move like this, which is a good idea, kicking the rook back, and then this type of move. Everything seems to be held together, and I don't know how inconvenienced the black pieces would really be having the rooks function on this 6th rank. And keep in mind, this isn't just any pawn that black would have been picking up on b2. Without the white b pawn around, black's b pawn increases in value, and the rook is very well placed here on b6 to support each ensuing advance. It's passed, and it will be pushed in short order. So this is maybe a direction that Anand could have gone in to have captured on b2 right now, but instead it was bishop d4. The rook drops back, c4, challenging d3. If this pawn is ever captured, you're helping this rook come to life, so we don't have that particular capture. We don't have d takes c. So what do we have? We have knight takes e, which is disrupting the black structure here, and with the opposite color bishop ending, white will look to put pressure on this base point g6. So the bishop gets there right away. The queen is now finally ready to come out from the corner. C takes d, and not so fast with bishop takes d. If bishop takes, we could have this, and I'm not so sure what is even best. It might turn out best that the king has to come out to recapture, so that when the rook does take on d3, the king is at least there to defend g3. But we're in a position now where black is up a pawn, their king is exposed, and it's really not a road to go down. Queen c6, I don't even want to go any further down this line. Black is the better side here. Again, up a pawn and a little bit safer king. So we don't capture on d3 with the bishop. Instead, it was bishop or rook to d2 that was played. And now the queen swings in to b4, hitting the rook, pressure on b2, and we had rook on a to d1, more pressure on d3. This is also one other possibility that black had, which is to say rook to f8, and now there's some issue on f2. For example, if let's say this pawn is captured, black can actually smash through on f2 and then hammer away at that square with rook here, or maybe even better is queen to d6. A couple ideas in mind. This rook is pinned, it's going nowhere. Queen takes here is a threat, and also bishop takes on f2 is a threat, unleashing a discovered attack on the bishop on d3. So we could have this, and after queen, let's say to g3 to defend, queen to g2 to defend g3. Keep in mind you wouldn't want to play here. That's running into more trouble with that f2 rook. So queen to g2 to defend. Now this rook comes over, more pressure on f2. Black is just firing away at this rook, which is pinned, and finally can capture away on that square. And at the end of it, black is yet again up a pawn in this queen endgame, and it is black who's the one who's trying to, of course, win. We did not go down that line. We did not have this particular move played. It was not rook to f8, putting pressure on f2, but queen to b4. Certainly an active move, but I believe this would have been better. Rook on a to d1 it was. Bishop takes the pawn. The queen is finally out and about, and after bishop to f6, black is essentially just crawling into a ball and trying to make sure they neutralize the position. Black still being the side who is up a pawn, but this bishop is very strong on e4, and black has some concern about white being able to converge on the g6 pawn. Bishop f6 was it, and another idea would be e5, with the idea of shutting down the rook's influence on the d file, since there is now a nice strong link on the d4 post. But it was not e5 that was played. I guess one thing to note is that if we do have e5, I guess the only concern is that maybe this bishop could be undermined at some point with f4. That's going to, however, take some work to do just that. We didn't have that. It was bishop f6. White now captures on d3. A lot of exchanges, looking to now penetrate on that 7th rank. That is neutralized. A lot of pieces now being exchanged. We're in an opposite color bishop ending, and after bishop d3, keeping pressure on the pawn, also paving the way for queen to b7 to pick up the b5 pawn. Anand says, go ahead, take it. I want to make sure that I have my king safe. I want to make sure I secure my g6 point, and there's really, at this point, no way to break down the black position. Black has the more exposed king, but at the end of the day, this is going to turn out to be a draw, however you slice it. But certainly a fighting draw in this particular game, and this one here finishing up where we have simply no mating material. So a much more interesting game that we saw here. Anand really having a stronger pull throughout a great portion of this game. A couple ways that he could have maybe improved upon his moves, but at the end of the day, we're once again seeing a draw, a fighting draw, I should say, in this particular round of the World Championship. So we're still tied now at 1.5 points each, and we'll see what takes place in round 4. So that's all for this video. As always, I hope you got something out of it. Take care. Bye.